Hello, my friends. This is Mickey Desai, one of your hosts for The Thing About Cars, sitting here in Strongbox West in lovely Atlanta, Georgia. Around the table, we've got
Paul,
Beka,
Ben.
Short agenda for this episode. We want to talk about a couple things. I think we're going to start with a couple, actually two very quick trivia items for the Grand Trivia Auto segment. The first one we're going to answer right away because I think Becca's going to know it immediately. The question is, what was the manufacturer's suggested list price for the Mustang when it was first introduced? The answers to potential multiple choice answers here are A, $2,999, B, $1,995, C, $2,495, or D, $2,368.
they're all so close. And we're talking about base model, obviously, the
Yeah.
introductory.
And we're going to answer this one right away. Do you gentlemen have any guesses?
Not really.
I'm going with $29.99.
$29.99.
No.
So, yeah, Becca says no.
Give me the other three again.
$1,995, $2,495, $2,368.
I'm torn between the 19 and 23.
So what year did the first Mustang come out?
Well, they had the 1964 and a half, which was an early release 65. So it was missing some of the finer trim pieces, basically.
So we're talking about a 64, 65 time frame price tag.
Right.
and all
Right.
of
I mean, we're
these-
talking about
All of these are in
April
that-
1964.
65.
Thank you.
And all of these are sort of in that same ballpark. So it is a hard choice.
But I know, and it was in subsequent years, not the initial launch year, that there were some beautiful higher up Mustangs that were closer to 3,000, just over 3,000, which is why I'm leaning on that 19. It's tough though.
It is tough. The answer is the first list price for the Mustang when it was first introduced was $2,368.
Option number
Wow.
2 for me. I knew it was going to be one of the lower ones just because it's when you want to kick yourself in the
Right.
butt for not inventing time travel to go buy a 69 Mach 1 or actually it was probably earlier, but it was like $3,200. Like, oh my God.
What's the average sticker for the 2019 Mustang?
Last time I went out looking at prices, there were some base model GTs that were 40-some thousand. And I don't remember which packages it had, but it really just made my head explode.
Sure.
You know, the Mustang that I have now, she's a 97. Paul hasn't heard me talk about her. If you guys haven't heard me talk about her before, 97. And list price on her brand new back then was $18,000. So that the getting into the 40s makes my head explode.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so now that we've knocked out the relatively simple, straightforward question, let's go with the one we'll answer this one at the end of the episode. So the second Grand Trivia Auto question we have for the day is, what was the first car to come equipped with anti-lock brakes?
Have we done this one before?
Have we?
It sounds familiar.
Well, let me read the answers then. Well, maybe we'll just redo it.
I'll still get it wrong.
Was it the Lincoln Continental Mark III? Was it the Shelby Cobra? Was it a BMW 1600? Or was it a Jensen FF?
I think we have had this, and I think I actually know the answer on it, and I think I remember my snarky comment to one of the options.
Well, go for it. Let's see. We just won't answer it in the end of the question if you think you've got it. Can Beka win this episode of the Grand Trivia Auto?
For $300,000. Beka.
Yes, that'll buy a lot of Mustangs. Thank you. And actually,
gold.
I don't have the worst record for answering
Yeah.
trivia, by the way. That goes to Ronnie. I believe the answer was Lincoln. And I made a snarky comment against the Ford, even though it's a Shelby. That was one of the times that I had said Ford has never been first since the assembly line.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I get to tell you that Beka was not correct.
Okay. It was all sounding very familiar. Maybe I'm remembering two different.
It does sound very familiar.
It does.
But let's just save the real answer for the rest of the episode then. So we'll hang on that for
all
a
right.
bit.
So you've had one eliminated.
One is eliminated. That's
You're
correct.
down to 3.
Yes. Let's do a quick listener question because I know we've got a couple of them. Very quickly, I want to touch on this thing that John M. sent to us via our Facebook page. John says, I think this would be an interesting subject, and he links us to an article which is called "The Biggest Bet in Automotive History" on autoextremist.com, and basically it's about electronic vehicles. I asked John if he would care to be any more specific with an actual question about electronic vehicles, and here's what John says. John says, "There's a lot of fundamental roadblocks on EVs. Right now, today, it's beyond impossible to match the economy of hydrocarbon power. Even if you did not use gas for a car, you still have to build the car, so that's going to require the use of oil. Oil is needed to produce the shirt you're wearing, the computer you use, the roads to drive on, even the pillow you sleep on. Oil touches almost all products and daily aspects of daily life. The production and utilization efficiency of fossil fuel is a huge economic driver on everything we do, and right now the technology does not exist to change that paradigm." It is possible John has an agenda.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah.
But he is correct on a lot of that
Yes.
at the moment, and that's all the more reason why I would be in favor of getting away from oil as an automotive fuel. It is just such a valuable resource for so many other things.
Right, exactly. But what do you think, Paul? EVs. I mean, we could get
My concern regarding EVs is twofold. I picture a world where we could find ourselves with let's see, we use where the electric grid could become strained in various cities, and I think that we're kind of rushing so quickly into I'd use the word forcing manufacturers, and therefore forcing individuals to drive electric cars.
Wait, are you saying that we would also force them to get rid of any gas vehicles that they have in their driveway, or just forbid the future buying of gas?
The way things often go, you have politicians who would say, "Oh, don't be concerned about what you presently have," and there are some who are already beginning to say a forced buyback of some cars in some cities. There are people already proposing it, to the applause of some.
Well, remember what the government did with incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah.
And sort of forced to transition to not only CFs, but LEDs.
And that's a topic that I'd love to talk about at another time, because that got really crazy. But wasn't so good for us to be using.
But nobody came to my door saying, "Give me your light bulbs." So my concern would not be future purchases, but to protect what I have. Because I think some of you guys know that over my dead body, I will exercise very strongly my Second Amendment right over what is sitting in my driveway.
And rightfully so.
I know.
Well, I mean, if we're using the light bulbs thing as an example, no, but the government knew that without, with the inability to get fresh incandescent bulbs in your home, that technology was going to die out within a very predictable number of years anyway.
There are means of their. So then my other concern is I see a world where, with that load on the grid, you're being told, "Mickey, you can drive on Mondays and Wednesdays. Ben, due to your whatever, where your name lies in the alphabet or whatever, that you get Tuesdays and Beka, unfortunately."
I have some expletives for that one.
Well, the thing is, we all know that electrical vehicles, the idea of doing a paradigm shift to EVs is there's still a lot to be required, to be desired rather, not the least of which is charging infrastructure and better batteries. But on the other side of that is, at least in Atlanta, electricity could be doing a lot more to help people get around in Atlanta and not involve your personal daily driver car.
Well, so could they do better with their mass transit options?
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Much different.
It's exactly what I'm talking about. But Atlanta doesn't make use of those technologies on a larger scale.
No.
Not to mention
Atlanta's terrible with its planning and implementation of different things. It's not an area thinking. It's very individual. Everybody is still very drive your own car. It's not friendly to mass transit or things like that.
So, you know, I mean, we could sit here and walk through the article that John sent us. But I still think in the end, to Ben's point, I got to agree with Ben. On the one hand, I don't want the issue forced upon me. On the other hand, I really do wish as a society we were better equipped to get away from oil. But
and like he was pointing out, and it's the same things that go through my brain every time somebody's arguing about it. So many things. I was glad to hear that roads were covered in that. Yes, your roads have oil in them. Everything that you touch that is plastic has oil in them. And that encompasses not only everyday items, but all the medical things that save people's lives every day are plastic. I was holding up my chapstick while he was listing that. It has it has oil in it. It's, I mean, some way, shape, or form.
In multiple ways, actually.
yeah.
So it's in everything. It's in our everyday lives, and getting away from that is going to be exceedingly.
But so answer this question for me. Why does getting away from oil to move my car around mean that medical supplies or chapstick are going to suffer?
Well, no, I'm not saying it's going to. I'm saying if you look at the whole thing, if you're looking at the whole forest to say we want to reduce our oil, those are all the things you're going to have to think
And
of.
actually, maybe the opposite, because that's what I was saying earlier is that it is such a valuable raw material for making things that if we're not burning it up, one shot use as a fuel might last a little longer as a raw material.
Right. Or, we could just start burying people down where the high pressure is and, make some more. Just kidding. Was that gruesome? I'm sorry.
It's not. It's Soylent Green.
That was scientific, is what it was.
Soylent Green's a whole other discussion. But no, and I understand that. It's if you're not looking at the whole big picture, it's start one place at a time. Okay. I understand that. I understand how cars are a natural target for that, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I am against Big Brother coming along and saying you will do this.
Amen, sister.
That is something I have a big problem with, first of all. So if you want to stop selling gas-powered engines in X amount of years, put the plan in place, make it reasonable. Don't touch what I already have. Don't make it so that I can't ever run it because there will never be another gas station. I found that unreasonable. Other things, you can go after other things as well. But.
And another great way to change the basic thing you use is when the new one becomes more cost effective.
Yeah, that's right. But the argument that the government shouldn't dictate something, the government has done that with other issues before that were generally regarded as good ideas by some people. For instance, slavery. Right, and half the country went to war on the issue of this economic thing related to the issue of slavery. When half of society basically said, "Yeah, we don't want to do that anymore," and other people said, "Wait, you can't tell me what to do," and proceeded to get their asses kicked. But it does happen, and sometimes it happens for good reasons.
So that brings up ethics, and morality. It's interesting to me that we've decided that the usage of fossil fuels, so-called fossil fuels, is evil, and I think that steers the narrative and helps garner the support necessary, and it makes me wonder, in my broad thoughts, who's behind that movement and why? As sometimes it could even be the oil companies themselves. And, who's decided that? I mean, we know there are some people have a hatred for corporations, period, as if, corporations are ugly, the wealthy, bad. I do wonder, sometimes things are not exactly as they seem.
Right.
And I wonder who is truly behind what I deem a religious drive to eliminate being driven by gasoline and dieseline, etc.
Religious?
Religious.
Please explain.
The people treat it like something that they have to protect at all costs. Right. Their viewpoint. They'll get very defensive and or hostile about it. They will
not
preach
religion
to,
per se, but the treatment of it is like
the zeal of religion. Yeah,
there's a worship in
that's a good way to put it.
Aspect to it. Yeah.
That's an excellent way to put it. All right.
Well, we all know I worship my car.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope I'm not sure John is going to say you answered my question or not, but I think that's as far as we're going to go with it today.
Is it bad if I ask what was the question again?
He didn't. That's the funny part. The funny part is he didn't actually have a question. He just said, "Can you talk about this?" So
I think we covered it.
I think
we did pretty good considering some of them we barely have an answer for. I think we had a very widespread.
Right. Right. And now I have to figure out if I'm going to delete that one political foray out of there. I might just delete it.
And I wasn't intending to go political. It was more of just I don't know.
I think it was good. It wasn't overly
You don't think so?
political. No, we didn't.
Because I don't think it said here's Republican or
Correct,
Democrat
exactly.
or here's a side of the. I'm
Exactly.
just saying don't come.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, moving on.
We do have another listener question. Ben, you wrote up there. What does that say again? Robert had a question?
Yeah, he wants to know why his Honda Odyssey has 3 oxygen sensors and 3 catalytic converters.
Oh.
And, well, the short version is, or the short answer is, because that's the setup that works best on that vehicle.
Because you have a Y pipe instead of an H pipe?
Well, the
Where you
reason
would
I'm
have
laughing
more?
is because the answer is essentially just because that's the way they wanted it, right? But
Yeah, well, I mean, to go into the infrastructure of it a little bit, I mean, this is, I think I did reply asking which engine he had. I didn't hear back, but I'm presuming it's a V6. So it probably has, one of everything for each cylinder bank and then one more further downstream on the main exhaust pipe.
yes.
And to give everybody a quick, I hope I can be succinct, rundown of what all these things do. Catalytic converter basically cleans up exhaust gases. It's a catalyst chemically. It speeds up the oxidation and reduction reactions where your unburned hydrocarbons and nitrous oxides and things like that combine with oxygen and become more benign stuff.
Right.
You often have more than one for various reasons. Sometimes space, they're kind of a chunky component, not like they used to be.
Right.
But having one per cylinder bank in a V engine is not a bad idea either sometimes, because sometimes your cylinder banks can be sort of separately managed.
Yep.
And the oxygen sensors you just about always need more than one of, because you need an upstream and a downstream
Right.
input.
That's what I was going to say, the
So-
downflow. And
Right. The computer that manages the engine, basically, while the oxygen sensor is looking at is the efficiency of the combustion.
Right.
By checking the amount of oxygen in the exhaust stream, it's telling the computer how much of the fuel is getting burned.
So do you have to have an O2 sensor for every catalytic converter?
Not necessarily. Sometimes you can have more sensors than converters. And
That's what I was thinking. You generally have more of the sensors.
yeah, my Volkswagen was an inline 4. It had 1 converter and 2 sensors. One was upstream and one was downstream of the converter. By comparing those 2 readings, it knows what it's doing. My motorcycle, interestingly, has 1 converter and I believe 2 sensors. Maybe have 3. I'm not sure, but it's a 2-cylinder engine that has 1 cylinder for each exhaust header upstream of the catalytic converter. So there's probably 1 downstream, but I haven't looked to see. But yeah, it's all just it's really simple in theory how it all works.
You don't suppose Robert wants to get rid of his catalytic converters and just have one big one?
That's interesting. Well, it's a Honda Odyssey, so he's got room for it.
He's got room for it. We should talk to him about that and maybe.
Or maybe just rip out the whole thing and put in a jet engine.
There you go. I was thinking an LS, but Beka
Haven't we gone down this path before when we were on the
Yeah.
Takata airbag thing? We
I
were
think
going to
so,
turn
yeah.
an Odyssey into some crazy LS powered 4-wheel drive,
monstrosity.
and where
I
we
would
would
love to see
put
this
the-
happen. Actually, I want to let's turn one into a battle vehicle and just
Just somebody give it some better styling, please.
But come on, the Odyssey's not so bad.
Well, that last
Every
generation,
minivan, I'm just saying.
that
every
most recent generation that's got the funky kind of jagged line on
Yeah.
the bottom of the greenhouse, no.
No,
That just, it looks awkward.
I agree.
Huh.
But
Yeah.
back to that oxygen sensor question, I'm puzzled. Typically, you'll have upstream and downstream for the purpose of monitoring the catalyst efficiency. So if we have bank 1 and bank 2 being the left and right cylinder heads or banks of pistons, whatever, I'm wondering why you would have 2 converters followed by a third and only 3 sensors.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. was it a total of 3 or?
Well, yeah, he just said 3 of each.
That's
Okay, so he's saying there are 6 total.
Well, yeah, 3 sensors and 3 converters.
Okay, because I was originally, my brain went the wrong way because I was envisioning the Y pipe, where usually if you go further down, I was thinking a total of 3. So 1 for the whole thing, sensor, and then the cat, and then the sensor. But if there's 6, so it's going to be higher up on the exhaust.
I think he's saying there's 3 in total.
That's what I've heard. But
Of
That's
sensors.
what I was thinking. But then he was 3 sensors or 3?
3 cats, 3 sensors.
Yeah.
I bet you there's more that he's missing.
Yeah, I think there may be more.
So a cat and a sensor up in the 2-prong portion of the Y pipe, and then one
we
of
don't
each
know that,
down.
but-
That's why I asked.
Somebody needs to climb underneath an Odyssey. Where can we find an Odyssey?
Yeah, we're only guessing at this point, but Honda had a reason for doing what they did. It could even be just something as simple as packaging stuff into the space available.
Well, that's right, and that's why I asked the question: is there always one sensor for each cat?
Since 1996 or so, with OBD2, the tendency is that the government wants to know that the pre-cats are getting to temperature and operating rather quickly, and that still applies to vehicles in the year 2020. That your cats are up to efficiency quickly. So typically you want to monitor that cat to know whether it is working. So the comparison, as Ben said, between the upstream and the downstream allows the computer to know, oh, good cat. Because you should have not the what's the term of the graph, the
bell curve.
What it's monitoring in a graphical sense should be different between upstream and downstream. If they're identical, the cat's not working.
Exactly.
So how do you do that if downstream is only one?
Right.
How would you know whether left bank, right bank, main cats or pre-cats, original cats are functioning? That's odd. Yeah, that's odd.
So we should put cutouts into Robert's exhaust system.
Yeah.
Or MIL eliminators. I'm just saying. I'm just putting that one out there. And MIL eliminator is a malfunction indicator lamp eliminator, and that's when you put something like an off-road X pipe or H pipe, and it removes your cats and your O2s. These plug in the place and stop your check engine light from coming on.
Right.
And why every time I go for emissions, people pull out the mirror from my car.
The statements mentioned here in this program are not necessarily those of...
Because let's remember, too, the whole reason why
You're perfect for that legal jargon. Sorry.
Let's remember, too, the whole reason we have emission controls is because we like having breathable air.
That's right.
People younger than about 40 will have no concept of this. Even some in their 50s only barely remember it. But if you look at pictures of big American cities back in the 60s and 50s and even into the early 70s.
There was no smog.
There was tons of
like Los Angeles had this brown cloud that covered it in places like Cleveland.
They measured it. They said that the smog is as caustic as cleaning fluid or something like.
And here's the thing, the EPA was signed into law in 1970. The Clean Air Act came shortly thereafter. We have twice as many vehicles on the road in the United States as we did in 1970, and the air is a whole lot cleaner.
Yes.
There was actually I don't know if it was a documentary where I even ended up watching this at. It's an area in China, I believe, where they couldn't go outside without their and not crazy masks. It was still a pretty lightweight mask, because the air was so bad from pollution.
And our emission controls are so good now on vehicles that if you have a gasoline-powered lawnmower, that thing actually emits a lot more nasty stuff than a Cadillac Escalade does.
Sure.
And I will tell everybody, I got laughed at so much when I first did this, and now everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. I personally have had an electric lawnmower.
I do too.
For almost 20 years.
As do I.
No way. All three of you guys?
Yeah.
And it's just because my focus for all the oil and spark plug, as I put it, things was my car. I didn't want to deal with it anywhere else. So all of my yard stuff, and I got so much grief about that electric lawnmower.
I love mine.
I love mine too.
Yeah.
And they actually have some really cool ones out now. The Ryobi one looks mean, but I have a Black & Decker.
I've got a Cobalt, the Lowe's brand.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
and it's it's self-powered too. So my joke is I couldn't afford a Tesla, so I got a self-powered electric mower.
There you go.
But I mean, it does the job. It's great.
Sure.
Oh, it does better. It's lighter and 4-wheel changing, so it's not one wheel at a time that you have to. Okay,
Yeah.
I went the totally wrong direction. The thing about lawnmowers.
Wait a minute. We have a lawnmower with all-wheel drive. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's just on a standard gas lawnmower, generally you have one lever to change the height, the up and down with the wheels. Yeah. And this one you can adjust all four independently. And
Well, mine actually has one lever that just does the whole thing, whereas old gas mowers I've had a lever on each wheel, and I didn't need that much variation. I just needed the whole height. So having the one lever is great.
Well, I'll be glad when they convert leaf blowers to the electric engines. Those things.
You can get them.
yeah, I thought I had seen some.
Yeah, they're actually worse hydrocarbon emitters than.
Oh, yeah.
others.
But on a side note, because a leaf blower is a snow blower down here as well. And I never posted the videos of me doing this, but if you want an electric leaf blower, I'm not kidding you. This is what I did for a snow blower. Shop vac, plug your hose from the intake to the
Output.
and it blows.
Yes.
And there you have your electric leaf blower is your shop vac.
I have to drag the extension cord all over the yard, but
Which leads directly into to my thought on the leaf blower topic.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we blow our leaves out into the streets?
It's just going to come right back.
To come right back
I know.
and foul up the streets so that your sidewalk looks clean. Why are we not sucking it, as you said, vacuuming? Why are we not sucking it into something to utilize for some sort of energy?
I mulch them back into the lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I agree with you. I have forever, because it
Pet
is such
peeve.
noise pollution too. You hear these things, especially when you're in the suburbs. It's obnoxious.
Yeah, it is obnoxious.
But I used mine for snow, and you know my driveway.
Which is a good use for it, but
So
I have an electric leaf blower at home, but it requires an extension cord. I'd like to see the battery technology come along to let the landscaping crews.
So now that we've bored the snot out of our audience with lawn care, can you swap an LS into a leaf blower?
Swap an LS into a leaf blower. You should
swap
see the
an LS into a lawnmower.
Yes. All right. Let's
Or
get back
a
on track here.
Wankel powered leaf blower.
There you
How
go.
about that?
I'll build an LS.
Smaller and
You
lighter,
build
yeah,
a-
and
I love
smoother.
it. I love it.
Better yet, Mickey can build the LS. I'll build the.
This is all
the
Robert's fault, by the way.
He can build the Wankel one.
Rotativo.
And then Ben, I think that leaves you with a Lotus powered lawnmower.
All right. Let's be serious for one last minute, then we'll call this episode a wrap. Or maybe we should just quit on that note. I don't know. It's just.
I feel like we're forgetting something. I kept trying to remember to go back to something, and now it's just gone.
Well, let's wrap up our trivia segment anyway, and then call it a wrap. And what I was going to talk about is this jet-powered car that's slowly eking its way up to the 1,000-mile-an-hour mark. And the only reason I wanted to mention it is because it does not have rubber tires. Apparently, the thing moves so fast that they've had to engineer forged aerospace aluminum tires for this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because the rubber melts.
Because
I'm
everything
assuming.
just flies off, yeah. So we'll come back to that some other day. In the meantime, let's find our grand trivia auto question for the day. The one that Beka got wrong. The question is, what was the
He's
first?
just going to keep saying that.
The question is, what was the first car to come equipped with anti-lock brakes? Becca's guess was the Lincoln Continental Mark III. That leaves three choices remaining. Is it the Shelby Cobra, the BMW 1600, or the Jensen FF? Gentlemen.
Oh, now I remember.
Yeah, I think it's the Jensen, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where
Paul?
I just went.
So I'll try the BMW
try the
just so I
BMW?
can be different.
Okay.
Because the Jensen was the odd man out as far as choices.
In 1966, Jensen FF came equipped with the Dunlock Maxeret anti-lock braking system, originally developed for use on aircraft. Although crude by today's standards and sometimes unreliable, the Jensen FF's anti-skid system was a huge technological breakthrough at the time. 3 years later, in 1969, the Lincoln Continental Mark III improved on the idea,
Okay, there we
placing sensors on the rear wheels that modulated pressure on the rear brakes when they began to lock up. So it was the Jensen. Good job, everybody. And
go. Except for Becca. Don't forget to say, except for Becca.
I'm not going to say that because Lincoln did improve upon the notion, and they do get a mention. So, but thank you as always for listening to this episode of The Thing About Cars, recording
The Thing About Lawnmowers.
The Thing About Lawnmowers, recording in Strongbox West as usual. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at thethingaboutcars.com or on our Facebook page. Just search for The Thing About Cars. We always value your support on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/thethingaboutcars. And look forward to hearing from you anytime for any reason. Hope you guys are having a good one out there. Be safe. Take it easy.
Bye.
Hey.
Peace.
Real podcast for money.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.